Very good morning to you both.
Hello.
Well, Katie, what do you make of these reports and the idea that the Prime Minister is getting weekly updates?
Well, I think there's a real difference between weekly updates in terms of what her MPs are getting up to and actual attacks and assaults in Westminster on vulnerable people, vulnerable members of staff. And I think that they've been slightly lumped in together in the Sunday papers over the weekend. And that these things are very different, I think. I'm sure the Prime Minister gets updated regularly on what's going on within the party, but if she found out that there were any assaults going on or anybody being picked on because they were vulnerable, I don't think she would sit back idly. I never witnessed a Prime Minister who was willing to put up with that kind of behaviour.
But you say found out, but the impression that I think we're all getting now, whether we're talking about Hollywood, whether we're talking about Westminster, is that there was a kind of an eyes wide shut culture going on, that everybody kind of knew what was going on and who the offenders were, but there was a kind of a consensus not to rock the boat. Would you agree with that?
I'd absolutely agree with that, and I think most whips offices have a safe where they have a sort of secrets on everybody, and definitely sexual harassment and who is a sex pest is absolutely on their list as well.
And that's been used as a pressure point to get them to vote in line.
The right way,
really?
Yes, absolutely, and behave the right way. That is, you know, that's a tried and tested method of the whips office. You know, sort of controlling people.
Well, hang on a minute. So these complaints are then used as a form of blackmail?
Well, I think they would have been, because I think it's part of a culture where it wasn't seen as being, look, you've not sort of probably reached the bar of criminal offence, but if your name got out there, or if your wife found out that you were behaving like this, or if the papers found out...
But that would imply that Prime Ministers would know about this, because if the whips are doing that, you know, there are off-the-record conversations behind closed doors. I can see a chief whip saying to the PM, well, don't worry about so-and-so. We've got the goods on him because, you know, he made that grotesque pass.
Well, sometimes they try and protect the leader from having that sort of... So they've got deniable, you know, plausible deniability.
Again,
But what I think it points to is there has just been a culture, as you say, across all bastions of power in our society, where this type of behaviour there's a bit of a blind eye turned to it. Now, in Westminster, you trade on power in Westminster, and often this type of behaviour comes from power because a lot of these MPs can make or break your career as you come in. And when I entered Westminster when I was 21, and it definitely happened to me at the age of 21, but you sort of think, right...
So what happened to you? You were
yeah, I mean, somebody,
abused.
well, lunged at me on a regular basis, but I worked in an all-male team where there was no sort of human resources as such. You know, the person I would go to would be one of the sort of senior guys. And I think part of it is a big cultural thing as well. And also a lot of men in Westminster, remember, they're away from their wives, it's a long hours culture, a lot of late-night voting, a lot of subsidised booze, often women in much more junior positions. And some men in Parliament don't even think what they're doing is bad. They don't even see it. They think it's a perk of the job, that they reach a certain amount of power, and then what comes with that is a little bit of naughty behaviour, and they almost think that's, like, OK.
I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of what is needed now. The Prime Minister's right that we need an HR department that actually has teeth within Westminster. Young people that go into work in special advisor roles, it's made very clear to us early on that there's no real HR procedure at all. I mean, I came from working on a trading floor into politics, so I kind of got used to this behaviour early on, but some people came into this environment and, you know, had been wrapped in cotton wool beforehand and had no idea what they were about to experience.
I'm 100% certain that if we went off air and we went and had a coffee together, the four of us, you'd be in a position off the record to give us some names of MPs who are known within Westminster to be a problem.
I think they're very worried this morning, Richard.
Yeah.
So given that that's the case, and given that we're now going to hopefully have a new culture of openness, can you see a lot of by-elections occurring in the next 6 months as people are outed for what they've done?
I don't know if it will go as far as by-elections, to be honest, because I think a lot of people... Well, I think it probably should. I think this behaviour is pretty bad, but I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's so much of it that goes on, and as Katie was saying, there is no... When you work for an MP, they are your boss, they are your HR director. And what people don't know about Parliament, a lot of students work in Parliament, so a lot of people do, as part of their university year, they come down and they work for an MP. They are especially vulnerable as well.
It's not just sexual abuse, though, it's bullying too. There's a lot of bullying that goes on in Westminster, and it should be absolutely driven out. It's not acceptable in this day and age.
Have you ever, in all the years, either of you, that you've been in Westminster, have you ever seen an MP, male or female, calling somebody out for this behaviour? Have you ever seen an MP marching up to another one and saying, "Oi, what you just said, what you just did, what I've heard you did last night is unacceptable"?
I think they certainly choose the ones that they go for. For example, you know, very early on, I think they decided to give me a wide berth because they knew they're going to get a kick in the shins, and I'd shout quite loudly. And so, you know, I never really experienced it in the way that some of my colleagues have certainly.
And did anyone back you, Aisha?
Well, I mean, I was so young when I first started, I almost just didn't really I felt quite embarrassed as well. I almost felt like it was somehow my fault. I felt like nobody would have believed me. And also, I was ambitious. You know, I wanted to do well, and I sort of thought, I don't want to mark myself out as a troublemaker. I was also just a temporary staff member.
One
as
last
well.
thing that's worth saying, though, is that at party conferences each year, when I worked for MPs, it was my job to make sure that they went back to their rooms alone and they, you know, weren't engaged too much in too much conversation with one particular person. And it was surprising how many young people were trying to hit on MPs when I was there. That happens every year, so it's not entirely one way.
But just
except that the issue is consent.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it?
Absolutely.
You know,
somebody making
this is
I think you've got to be careful about doing a distinction.
This is the difference, because I feel quite passionate about this in terms of a consenting behaviour between two adults. They're both agreeable on what they're doing, even if they are cheating on their wives, and which is not acceptable. Or the difference between that and preying predatory behaviour, which is assault.
Because there might be a small number. There might be some, you know, bad behaviour affairs from both sides going on. That doesn't give. That's a separate issue.
But they've been merged together at the moment.
Well, I think we've got to sort of separate them. And the thing about MPs as well, in fact, 2 people I spoke to just coming in, taxi driver and someone in your office this morning, was MPs sit in judgment on the rest of the country. They make the laws, they represent us. They should hold themselves to a higher standard and they should conduct themselves to a higher standard as well.